Before Goliath became a name people feared, he was already a mystery people could not explain. He did not feel like an ordinary man made larger by strength or war. He felt like a leftover from something older, darker, and deeply unnatural, as if one of the ancient horrors the world was supposed to bury had somehow risen and started breathing again. That is what makes this story so chilling. Goliath was not just a giant standing in a valley. He was a question standing in front of history itself. And maybe that is why his story still reaches into the present. Because even now, people still sense that some evils are bigger than human, older than memory, and far more real than we want to admit. So, was Goliath merely a Philistine champion, or was he truly the last Nephilim giant who shocked the world? If this mystery already has your attention, comment giant below. Because to understand why David's victory mattered so much, we first have to uncover who Goliath really was. The dark mystery of Goliath, the last Nephilim giant who shocked the world. On the night Goliath entered the world, it was as though creation itself reacted. Above the valley of Gath, streaks of fire tore across the sky, and people later spoke of them in whispers, as if the heavens had seen something unnatural descending into history. His birth did not pass in an hour or even in a day. It stretched across 3 agonizing days, because no ordinary woman was made to bring forth a child whose body, at birth, already carried the size and weight of a grown man's torso. What kind of infant arrives like that and does not terrify everyone who sees him? No one could name his father. That silence only deepened the fear. But his mother could be named, and that was enough to make the elders uneasy. She was Orpah, a woman whose bloodline reached back through Moab, through old unions, old rebellions, and stories people preferred not to repeat after dark. In lands like those, lineage was never just family history. It was destiny. It was warning. By the day Goliath first touched the earth, word had already spread through Gath like a brush fire racing through dry grass. Before the third morning had fully risen, the village elders were already assembled in emergency council. Men who had seen war, famine, and death sat with dread on their faces because one glance at the child had told them what they were dealing with. The ancient blood had returned. Orpah's ancestry mattered. The Moabites had long been linked, in rumor and memory, to the old giant clans, and this child was not merely large. He was a sign, a living echo of the Anakim and the Rephaim, those feared races of giants whose names had once shaken entire nations. Scripture remembers that when the Israelite spies first saw the sons of Anak, they felt like grasshoppers in their own sight. That was the scale of terror attached to blood like this. These were not just oversized men. They were walking symbols of domination, war, and ancient strength. The Anakim had once occupied strongholds that looked impossible to break. Their cities stood like challenges carved into stone. It took Joshua, the same Joshua who led Israel under the hand of the living God, to drive them out And even then, not all of them vanished. The record in the book of Joshua says that some remained in places like Gaza, Ashdod, and Gath. Gath, the very ground now holding this child. Was that a coincidence? Or had something old been waiting there all along? The elders understood exactly what such a bloodline could mean. Fear was in the room, yes, but so was excitement. A full-grown giant of that kind could be worth 100 ordinary soldiers. In battle, he could break a line by himself. In single combat, who could stand before him? What army would not tremble at the sight of him stepping onto the field? To men hungry for power, that kind of child did not look like a curse. He looked like an opportunity. And so one terrible question consumed the council. Should they raise this boy into the ultimate weapon against Israel? A champion built to humiliate Israel's finest warriors and restore Philistine dominance in Canaan? Or should they end his life while he was still helpless, before his strength awakened fully, before he became something even they could no longer command? Imagine being in that chamber. Would you hear a baby crying? Or would you hear the sound of future battlefields opening? For hours they argued. Caution fought with ambition. Wisdom warned them of the danger, but desire spoke louder. In the end, ambition won. The dream of military supremacy was too intoxicating to resist. They spared the boy, not out of mercy, but out of hunger. From that moment on, he was no longer truly his mother's son. Orpah had carried him, suffered for him, and nearly died bringing him into the world. Yet the elders stripped him from her future with a single decision. He was registered as military property, claimed by the state, marked not as a child to be loved, but as an asset to be forged. Then they gave him a name that sounded less like a blessing and more like a sentence. They called him Goliath, the exile. And with that name, the world had its giant. By the time Goliath was 5 years old, he already stood taller than many grown boys, his height pushing past 5 feet, as though childhood itself could not contain him. In the village, that alone was enough to make the other children fear him. They would not run beside him, laugh with him, or invite him into their game. The moment they saw him coming, they scattered and hid behind their mother's skirts. It did not matter how softly he spoke or how carefully he moved. To them, his size was a verdict. Before he had done anything wrong, he had already been judged. And children can be cruel in ways that cut deeper than swords. Whenever he passed, they hurled the same mocking chant at him, a rhyme sharpened by fear and superstition. Monster child, heaven cursed, last of the fallen, judgment burst. Imagine hearing that again and again when you are still too young to understand your own story. What does a child begin to believe about himself when the whole village looks at him like a warning? Yet those early years were not empty of warmth. The state had claimed him, yes, but for a little while they still allowed him to remain with Orpah. Perhaps even the men who marked him as a future weapon understood that every weapon begins as a child in someone's arms. And in those quiet nights, far from the stares and the whispers, Goliath was not a symbol, not a threat, not a military asset. He was simply a son. Each night, Orpah pulled him close and held him with the fierce tenderness only a mother can give. She did not fully understand what he was or why he had come into the world the way he had. But love does not wait for perfect explanation. It reaches first and questions later. She would lean close and whisper into the darkness, "You are not a monster. No matter what the priests say, no matter what the people say, you are my son. You are different for a reason. You were meant for something." Those words became shelter for him. When the village gave him rejection, she gave him identity. Orpah felt there was something ancient inside him, something older than the stories most people dared to repeat. She could not explain it with learning or priestly language, but she felt it in her bone. Some truths arrive before words do. Some mothers sense what the world refuses to see. So she told him what little she knew. She spoke of the old world, of ages buried beneath memory, of giants who once walked the earth in terrible strength. In the days before, there had been men of renown, beings of unusual power, figures so immense that later generations spoke of them with fear and awe. The book of Genesis says there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. Orpah did not quote it like a scribe. She spoke it like a mother trying to make sense of her son. Maybe, she told him, some fragment of that ancient power still lived in his blood. Maybe that was why he was unlike the others. The boy listened to every word. He wanted to believe her, because her voice was the only place where he did not feel cursed. And still, the questions stayed with him. Why had he been born like this? Why did everyone else recoil from him? Why did he feel as if his life had begun long before his first breath? Orpah could not answer all of that. She could soothe him, protect him for a while, and give him words strong enough to quiet the darkness for one more night. For that season of his life, her love was enough, but only for now. On the day Goliath turned 8, childhood ended without warning. Commander Azur, one of the Philistine army's most feared generals, arrived to claim him, and he did not come alone. 20 armed soldiers marched with him, not because a child could resist them, but because everyone understood this was no ordinary child. This was a retrieval, a transfer of property. Standing before Orpah's home, Azur gave no comfort, no explanation, no room for mercy. The boy comes with me now. He will be trained as a warrior. He is the property of Philistia. This is not negotiable. With those words, a mother's worst fear became law. Orpah pleaded, but her grief changed nothing. No one stepped forward. No one protested. In their eyes, the time had come for the boy to fulfill what they called his destiny. But what kind of destiny begins by tearing a son from the only arms that ever made him feel human? That day, Goliath was taken from her and it was the last time he would ever see his mother. Yet separation did not erase her voice. Even after he was dragged into the machinery of Philistine power, he carried her words like embers hidden under ash. She had told him he was special. She had told him his difference meant something. Those words remained buried deep inside him, surviving where tenderness no longer could. Sometimes a single sentence from a mother can outlive an empire's cruelty. They brought him to the garrison at Gath, the place where boys were stripped down and rebuilt into fighters. Its name was spoken with dread. The training grounds were merciless, the routine savage, and the survivors did not come out as boys at all. They came out harder, colder, and marked by blood, pain, and discipline. That was where Goliath would spend the next 8 years of his life, not growing up so much as being forged. His training was placed under Master Talmai, a battle-scarred veteran who had lost an eye fighting the Israelites. Talmai had the look of a man who had buried softness long ago. The moment his single eye settled on the young giant, he made one thing clear. The first words he gave Goliath were not instruction. They were a sentence over his identity. Understand this now. You are not human. You are not Philistine. You are a tool, a weapon we will use against our enemies. Tools do not have feelings. Tools do not question orders. Tools exist for one purpose only: to break our enemies. That was the tone of Goliath's life from that moment on. For years, they trained him with violence. They called it discipline, but much of it was cruelty wearing the mask of purpose. Endless drills. Punishments for weakness. Punishments for hesitation. Punishments for failing to meet expectations no ordinary body could have survived. Day after day, he was pushed until his muscles burned, his bones ached, and every limit inside him cracked open. The Philistines were not raising a soldier. They were building a living nightmare. His purpose was never broad or noble. It was terrifyingly simple. He was to become the most feared warrior in the land, a symbol of dread, a walking threat, a safeguard against Israel. The Philistines would not stop until he became exactly what they envisioned, or until the process killed him. That was the bargain made over his life before he was old enough to understand it. But while the Philistines worked to harden his body by day, the nights belonged to questions they could not beat out of him. In the dark, when the shouting stopped and the camp finally quieted, the mystery of his own existence returned. He knew he was different. He knew the old stories pointed somehow to him. He had heard of the giants of ancient days, the mighty ones remembered in fearful whispers, and he could feel that shadow hanging over his blood. But how? Why him? What exactly had he inherited? And another question pressed even deeper. What had his people been before the world hunted them almost to extinction? Before they became monsters in other men's stories? Who were they? Were they only beasts of war? Or had something older, stranger, and more tragic been buried beneath the legends. Questions like that do not leave a restless soul alone. They grow teeth. So Goliath began searching in secret. Quietly, carefully, he moved through the edges of the camp and into places where official eyes rarely look. Drawn by hunger more than courage, he sought out the keepers of the first age, old men who guarded fragments of memory others had long discarded. These were men who still remembered whispers of the world before the flood, before judgment drowned the earth and erased whole histories. They held stories no commander cared about, and truths no army could control. That was when the second life of the young giant began, hidden beneath the first. By day, the Philistines trained Goliath's body for war. They stretched him, hardened him, and drove him through pain until strength became his only language. But at night, when the garrison walls fell quiet and his watchers grew careless, he slipped away into the dark and sought out the keepers, the old guardians of forbidden memory, to learn the hidden truths of his people. So while one world was shaping him into a weapon, another was awakening something far more dangerous inside him. Understanding. What happens when the man they are trying to control begins to discover who he really is? Among the keepers, one in particular drew close to him. His name was Jabneh, an aged scholar whose voice carried the weight of buried centuries. He did not look at Goliath with the same fear others did. He looked at him as though he were reading the final line of a story the world had tried to erase. And what Jabneh told him in those secret hours would stay with him forever. The Nephilim were not the monsters history turned them into, Jabneh said. That is the version written by the victors, by those who feared what they could not control. He told Goliath that the giants were born from a mystery beyond ordinary human understanding, from a union between the heavenly and the earthly, between the divine realm and mortal flesh. They were not merely creatures of brute force, he said. They were builders, teachers, bearers of knowledge. In his telling, they passed down skills and secrets that helped lift early civilization out of darkness. They shaped cities, instructed men, and opened doors humanity had not known how to unlock. But power like that never goes unchallenged. And when beings rise too high, fear rises with them. So Jabneh gave him an older, darker interpretation of the ancient judgment. He claimed the flood did not come only because the world had become corrupt, as the old sacred record in Genesis describes, when it says the earth was filled with violence. In his view, it came because the powers above could no longer tolerate what had been unleashed below. The giants had become too great, too influential, too difficult to contain, and so the waters were sent to wash them from the earth. Was that the full truth, or only the version preserved by those who still mourned them? Goliath could not know, but the words gripped him. Then Jabneh fixed his eyes on the young giant with something close to reverence, and his voice fell lower. You, he said, are the last echo of that ancient union. However you came into this world, whether through your mother's bloodline or by some deeper mystery no one can explain, You carry what they carried. Their strength, their shadow, their memory. You are the final remnant of the world that existed before the flood. Those words did more than answer questions. They changed the way Goliath saw himself. All his life, others had told him he was unnatural, cursed, a thing to be used. But here, in the silence of hidden chambers, another possibility emerged. What if he was not merely an accident of violence or bloodline? What if he was a surviving fragment of a lost age, a living witness to something the world had tried to bury forever? That kind of thought can reshape a soul. It can also destroy it. When Goliath reached 15, Master Talmai finally declared the training finished. By then, the boy had become something no ordinary soldier could ever hope to rival. He stood 7.5 feet tall, a towering force shaped by years of pain, discipline, and relentless conditioning. In Talmai's eyes, he was the greatest warrior he had ever forged. On any battlefield, who could stand against him? Only another giant born of that ancient blood, and as far as anyone knew, none were left. Yet for all his pride, Talmai carried a strange heaviness when he looked at Goliath. He understood something the young warrior still could not fully see. Goliath was not being honored. He was being used. He was a weapon that would be driven hard, pointed at enemies, and kept in service until the day it cracked, and then it would be discarded without ceremony. Even the man who helped shape him could sense the tragedy buried inside his greatness. On the battlefield, Goliath became a living nightmare. He mastered armed combat and bare-handed fighting alike, and often his presence alone shattered courage before steel ever met steel. Men heard his name and felt their resolve dissolve. Entire formations faltered before he even advanced. There are warriors who win battles, and then there are warriors whose reputation begins winning before they arrive. Goliath had become the second kind. Over the next 20 years, stories of the Philistine giant spread across the land like fire racing through dry fields. People gave him a name worthy of legend, the champion of the 5 cities. Every soldier who survived facing him returned with the same trembling description. They spoke of a figure so immense he seemed less like a man and more like judgment walking toward them. The book of 1 Samuel would later describe him as standing 6 cubits and a span, a height that made even seasoned fighters stare in disbelief. They remembered bronze armor covering him from head to toe, flashing beneath the sun like the scaled hide of some ancient beast dragged out of a forgotten age. That armor weighed more than 100 pounds, yet he carried it with the ease of another man wearing simple cloth. His spear was spoken of with almost as much dread as his name. Its shaft was as thick as a weaver's beam, so massive that ordinary men struggled even to move it. The iron point alone was heavy enough to make lesser warriors stagger. In Goliath's hands, it became an extension of something ruthless and exact. "What do you do?" when the weapon aimed at you looks impossible before the fight has even begun. But it was not only his size, nor the armor, nor the spear that made men fear him. It was the way he fought. He was precise, cold, efficient. Nothing wild, nothing wasted. He did not rush like a beast blinded by rage. He moved like someone shaped for one purpose from the beginning. Every strike felt measured. Every motion felt final. He did not merely overcome enemies. He erased resistance. The Philistines had succeeded in making him what they wanted. A being who seemed built from birth to destroy. And still, outside the battlefield, Goliath's life was hollow. Each victory made him more valuable to Philistia, but also more tightly controlled. The more he won, the more they watched him. The more feared he became, the more alone he lived. No true companion stood beside him. No laughter followed him into the evening. No circle of brothers welcomed him after battle. Even the Philistines, who praised his strength, feared the possibility that one day it might turn in their direction. That is the cruel pattern of power. People celebrate it when it serves them, then tremble at the thought that it might no longer obey. He had no family left either. His mother had died years earlier, and with her went the only person who had ever looked at him without calculation. Guards followed him everywhere, not as protectors, but as handlers. Their task was not to keep him safe. It was to make certain he never stopped belonging to the state. Imagine living like that, admired in public, feared in private, and never once free. So Goliath's identity narrowed until it seemed there was nothing left but the role forced on him long ago. He was a weapon for the Philistines, a giant in armor, a name whispered before war. Was that all he was meant to be? Whenever solitude found him, his thoughts drifted back to Orpah, to her voice, to the stories she used to tell in the dark when he was still small enough to be held. He remembered the old truths the keepers had shared with him, the forbidden memory of the Nephilim, their lost achievements, their buried history, the possibility that the world had not told their story honestly. Those memories became his secret refuge. But even that secret world had been almost completely wiped away. Jabneh, the old scholar who had become his only true friend, had died peacefully in his sleep 10 years earlier. The other keepers were not granted such an end. When the Philistine priest began to suspect what they were preserving, those old men were hunted down and executed. Their voices were silenced. Their knowledge was nearly erased. Nearly. Because what they had passed on did not die with them. It remained alive in one place only, in Goliath's memory. The last giant did not carry only strength. He carried a vanished world inside his mind, and no one around him truly understood how dangerous that made him. He was the last of his kind, the final son of an ancient race, a living remnant of a world that had almost vanished from memory. And through all the years of blood, training, conquest, and silence, Goliath carried one feeling he could never quite escape. Waiting, he could not have explained it clearly, not even to himself. He only knew there had to be more than this. More than being marched onto battlefields like a weapon pulled from a rack. More than hearing men tremble at his name. More than serving a nation that feared him almost as much as it depended on him. Why would a being like him be left alive at all if his only purpose was to kill and be used? Why preserve the last echo of a vanished race merely to turn it into a tool? That long, shapeless waiting finally drew near to its end in the year 1010 before Christ, when the Philistine and Israelite armies faced one another across the valley of Elah. It was the kind of place that seemed built for judgment. The valley cut between two steep ridges like a wound torn open in the earth, stretching for miles beneath the burning sky. In the rainy season, a stream flowed through its middle, but now, under the harsh heat of summer, the water had retreated and left behind only a dry bed of stone and dust. The Philistines held the southern slope. The Israelites stood across from them on the northern ridge. Between them lay open ground so dangerous that any army reckless enough to charge across it would be slaughtered before ever reaching the opposite side. So the army stared at one another and waited. Thousands of men, spears lifted, shields ready, nerves stretched tight. No one wanted to make the first move, because the first move would likely be the last. It was a perfect stalemate, the kind commanders hate and soldiers dread. You could almost feel the pressure thickening in the air, as if violence itself was crouching low over the valley, waiting for someone to give it permission. That kind of silence never lasts forever. Something always breaks it. That was when Commander Abner came to Goliath with what sounded like a request. Though both of them knew it was an order dressed in softer clothing, the stalemate had to end. One side had to force the other into fear. The solution was ancient, brutal, and simple. Single combat. One champion against another. One fight to decide the spirit of the war. Goliath did not argue. He had not been raised to argue. He had been raised to obey. So he descended into the valley of Elah and gave the challenge that would echo across history. His voice rolled through the valley like thunder against stone. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. It was not an empty boast. Everyone on both hills understood exactly who was speaking. This was not some reckless fighter trying to build a name. This was the champion of the 5 cities. The giant who had shattered armies. The man whose presence alone could collapse morale. How many Israelites heard that challenge and felt their strength leave them before the day had even properly begun? Morning and evening, for 40 days, Goliath came forward and issued the same challenge. Morning and evening, the Israelites remained on their ridge. Not one man stepped down. That silence should not be mistaken for cowardice. These were men who knew war. Men who had seen steel, blood, and death before. But this was different. This was not ordinary battle. This was being asked to stand alone before a figure who seemed less like a soldier and more like an ancient curse still walking the earth. He was taller than any normal man had a right to be. He wore bronze from head to foot. His spear looked like something built for siege, not for one hand. And he had never been defeated. Who among them could look at that and feel anything but dread? Day after day, his challenge went unanswered, and with each passing day the humiliation of Israel deepened. Goliath's words cut harder because they were true in the most visible way. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man and let us fight each other. The valley carried his voice upward. The men of Israel heard it. Their king heard it. Even Saul, who himself once stood head and shoulders above the rest, could offer no answer. And yet, for all the terror he inspired, there was no joy in Goliath's heart. No triumph, no real satisfaction, no sense of greatness. This was just another performance in the long theater of his captivity. Another day of being pointed at enemies by men who had spent his whole life deciding what he was supposed to be. He had become exactly what they wanted, and perhaps that was the deepest tragedy of all. The giant who terrified nations still did not belong to himself. Then something changed. When Goliath came down again after those 40 days, he noticed it almost immediately. The energy on the Israelite side was different. Something had shifted along the ridge. The atmosphere felt charged, not with courage exactly, but with movement. His grip tightened around the shaft of his spear. Had someone finally accepted? Had the waiting come to an end at last? He raised his voice again, louder than before, letting it crash across the valley floor. Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man and let us fight each other. And for the first time, someone moved. But it was not what he expected. Not a hardened warrior in armor. Not one of Saul's seasoned men. Not some scarred champion stepping forward with spear and shield. A boy came down instead. A boy, barely old enough to wear a beard. He wore no armor. No sword hung at his side. No shield covered his chest. In one hand he carried a shepherd's staff. In the other, a sling. At his side was a simple leather pouch. For a moment, Goliath could hardly process what he was seeing. Was this mockery? Was Israel insulting him? Had their desperation become madness? You can almost feel the sting of that moment. After 40 days of calling for a worthy opponent, this was the answer sent into the valley. The boy did not rush. He walked down the slope, calm enough to stop at the dry stream bed in the center of the valley. There, he bent down and chose 5 smooth stones, testing them in his hand one by one before placing them in his pouch. Only then did he continue forward. That was when rage rose in Goliath like fire. "Am I a dog, that you come at me with sticks?" he roared. And beneath the fury there was something more dangerous, something sharper, something close to humiliation. For 40 days he had stood as the terror of Israel, and now they had answered with a shepherd boy carrying a staff. He moved forward with contempt burning through him. "Come here," he snarled, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." But the boy did not flinch. He did not stumble. He did not retreat. He did not sound like someone who had wandered by mistake into the wrong story. Instead, he answered with a confidence so unsettling that even Goliath paused. "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." That landed differently. This was no ordinary boldness. This was not youthful ignorance pretending to be courage. The boy spoke as if the outcome was already settled, as if he was not facing the greatest warrior in Philistia, but merely walking into an assignment given by heaven. Then he went further. "This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand. I will strike you down, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." And then he declared the line that cut through the valley more sharply than any blade. "It is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle belongs to the Lord." For a brief instant, something flickered in Goliath's eyes. Not fear, not fully, but recognition. The boy was invoking the God of Israel, the God whose reputation still lingered over the ancient world like fire over dry land. The God who divided the sea before Moses so that the waters stood aside and his people crossed through. The God who brought down Jericho without siege towers or battering rams, only obedience, trumpets, and a command. The God before whom giant bloodlines had once fallen. The God whose judgments had haunted the stories Goliath heard from the keepers and from his mother long ago. That recognition passed almost as soon as it came. Pride rose to smother it. Identity rose to smother it. Training, memory, reputation, years of invincibility, years of men freezing at his voice, years of never being matched by any living opponent, all of it surged back into place. He was Goliath of Gath, champion of the 5 cities. He had never been defeated. He would not be brought down by a shepherd carrying stones. So he advanced. David ran toward him. In one swift motion, the boy reached into his pouch, drew out one of the stones, and set it into the sling. His arm began to turn. The strap spun. Faster. Tighter. Control. This was no clumsy child's gesture. He had used that sling before against lions and bears while defending his father's sheep. The wilderness had trained him in secret for this valley. Who would have guessed that a shepherd's hidden battles were preparing him for a giant no army dared face. Goliath lifted his spear, ready to end it with one crushing thrust. The boy would be dead before he ever got close enough to matter. But David had already released. The stone flashed through the air too quickly for Goliath to stop it. It was only a blur, a streak of force and precision. He barely saw it coming. He tried to shift, to turn, to react, but the moment had already escaped him. The stone struck him in the forehead with a sharp, dreadful crack that tore across the valley. The world lurched. His legs failed beneath him. The spear slipped from his grasp. He tried to steady himself, tried to command his body the way he had commanded it in battle 1,000 times before, but it no longer obeyed. All his strength, all his training, all his terror, all his history, all the weight of the last giant's name suddenly meant nothing. Then he fell. For one suspended moment, absolute silence swallowed the valley. Men on both hills stood frozen, unable to understand what their eyes had just seen. The invincible had collapsed. The champion was down. The weapon had failed. David rushed forward and stood over him. He seized the giant's own sword, a blade so heavy it demanded both hands, and with that final act, the contest was finished. Goliath's story, which had begun under falling fire in the skies above Gath, ended in the dust of Elah at the hands of a shepherd boy empowered by the God he had defied. And so the child torn from his mother, the warrior forged by violence, the last bearer of that ancient blood, fell in the valley. Goliath, the final echo of the giants, was no more. The valley did not erupt at first. It froze. For one impossible moment, every man on both hills stood trapped between what he had believed and what he had just seen. The giant was down. The voice that had thundered across the valley of Elah for 40 days had fallen silent. Dust rose around Goliath's body, drifting slowly in the heat, as if the earth itself was closing over something ancient. Then the silence shattered. Israel surged forward with a cry that had been buried under fear, and the Philistines broke in terror. The champion who had once carried their pride had become the crack through which their entire confidence collapsed. But Goliath's death was more than the fall of a warrior. It was the end of an echo, the last remnant of an older and darker world, a bloodline whispered about in fear, a memory stretching back to the giants of old, now lay motionless in the dust. The valley that day did not merely witness a victory. It witnessed a closing door. One age ended and another began. And yet, beneath the triumph, there is still something haunting about Goliath. Because in the end, he was not only a monster feared by nation, he was also a child taken from his mother, a soul shaped by violence, a life claimed by men who saw a weapon where there had once been a boy. That is what makes his story linger. He was terrifying, yes, but he was tragic too. And as the sun lowered over Elah and the army scattered, history remembered the shepherd who won. But somewhere in the fading dust of that battlefield, another question remained. What happens to a world that keeps turning children into weapons and then calls them monsters when they become exactly what it made them to be? Goliath's story does not linger in Scripture only because he was giant in size. It lingers because he represents something far darker and far more familiar than many people realize. He was the last echo of an ancient race, yes. He was a warrior feared by armies, yes. But beneath all of that, he was also a life shaped by fear, pride, power, and control. He was a child the world looked at and decided to weaponize. And in the end, that may be the most haunting part of all. Because when most people hear the name Goliath, they think only of arrogance, intimidation, and defeat. They remember the giant who mocked Israel and fell before a shepherd boy. But when you look deeper, the story forces you to wrestle with something more uncomfortable. How many people in this world become dangerous because they were never truly loved, only used? How many souls are pushed into roles they never chose, then judged for becoming exactly what pain, fear, and manipulation shaped them to be? That question does not belong only to the ancient world. It belongs to ours too. Even now, we live in a time that still creates giants. Not always men of enormous height, but systems of pride, fear, rage, control, propaganda, violence, and spiritual emptiness. We see people taught that power is everything. We see hearts hardened until compassion looks like weakness. We see people building their entire identity around intimidation, image, and force, only to discover that all of it can still come crashing down in a single moment. That is why this story still matters. Goliath is not only a figure in a distant valley. In many ways, he is a mirror held up to every age. And then David steps into the scene and reminds us of something this world keeps trying to forget. The greatest battles are not won by size, status, armor, or noise. They are won by faith, conviction, and the courage to stand when everyone else is frozen by fear. David did not win because he looked stronger. He won because he knew who his God was. He understood that when a battle belongs to the Lord, even the most terrifying giant is already living on borrowed time. That is the lesson this story leaves with us. Not every giant in your life will look like Goliath. Some will look like fear that has followed you for years. Some will look like rejection, addiction, shame, grief, betrayal, anxiety, or the lie that you are too small to matter. Some giants stand in families. Some stand in nations. Some stand in your own mind and whisper that nothing will ever change. But this story still speaks. Giants fall, not always quickly, not always the way people expect, but they fall. And maybe that is exactly what someone listening right now needed to hear. So do not measure your future by the size of what stands against you. Measure it by the greatness of the God who stands with you. Do not assume the loudest force in the valley is the one that will win. And do not believe that being overlooked means being powerless. Heaven has always had a way of choosing the unexpected stone, the forgotten shepherd, the voice no one saw coming. If this story stirred something in you, comment "Giants Fall" below. I would love to hear what stood out to you most in Goliath's story. And if you believe more people need to hear this message, share this video, subscribe, and stay with us for the next story, because the Bible is filled with moments that still speak with shocking power into the battles we face today. And as you leave this story behind, remember this: the Valley of Elah was not only the place where a giant died, it was the place where fear lost its throne, where faith stepped forward, and where the world was reminded that no power built on pride can stand forever before the living God.